The crowd laughed before the echo of the tennis ball faded, a sharp, cruel sound that cut through the country club like broken glass. And in that moment, the single dad janitor standing at the edge of the court felt every year of his quiet struggles pressed down on his shoulders at once. What no one saw was how his hands tightened, not in anger, but in memory, as if the past had suddenly stepped out from the shadows and demanded to be acknowledged. The CEO's mocking challenge hung in the air like a dare meant to humiliate, and yet something invisible shifted, something heavy and faded, because secrets have a way of choosing their own time to surface. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and hidden strength rising when it matters most, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them. He had not come to the tennis club to prove anything. He came because the cleaning contract paid well enough to keep his small apartment warm and to buy fresh fruit for his daughter's lunchbox. Every night after work, he returned home to help with homework, cook simple meals, and listen to stories about school while pretending he wasn't exhausted. His life was a careful balance of responsibility and restraint, shaped by loss and the promise he made the day he became both mother and father. The club members barely noticed him as he swept the courts and wiped benches, except when they needed to remind him where he belonged. He wore his uniform like armor, humble and invisible, and he kept his eyes lowered not from shame, but from discipline. The CEO, celebrated and admired, had arrived with an entourage and an air of untouchable confidence. She was known for her sharp mind, ruthless efficiency, and a public persona that thrived on bold gestures. Tennis was her stage, a place where she displayed power and control, and when she noticed the janitor lingering near the court, something about his calm presence seemed to irritate her. The challenge she tossed out was meant to entertain the crowd, to reduce him to a punchline, and to reinforce the invisible line between those who belonged and those who served. Laughter followed, and phones lifted, hungry for a moment worth recording. What the crowd didn't know was that years ago, before grief reshaped his life, the janitor had lived in a world defined by early mornings, endless drills, and international tournaments. Tennis had once been his language, his discipline, and his dream. An injury, followed by a family tragedy, had ended that chapter abruptly, forcing him to choose stability over spotlight. He had traded stadium lights for cleaning supplies, not because he was weak, but because he was strong enough to do what his child needed most. He never spoke of it because some victories are private and some losses are too sacred to explain. When he stepped onto the court, it wasn't bravado that guided him, but a quiet acceptance that dignity sometimes requires standing where you are least expected. The racket felt familiar in his hands, like an old friend who remembered him even when the world had forgotten. The first serve silenced the laughter, not because it was flashy, but because it was precise. Point by point, the mood shifted. The crowd leaned in, uncertain, confused, as the janitor moved with a grace that told a story no one had anticipated. Sweat mixed with disbelief as the CEO's confidence faltered, replaced by a dawning realization that she had underestimated a man whose life had taught him patience and resilience. As the match unfolded, it became less about winning and more about witnessing. The janitor's focus was steady, shaped by years of waking before dawn to prepare breakfasts and staying up late to fold laundry. Every return carried the weight of responsibility and the quiet hope that his daughter would one day see a world kinder than the one he endured. The CEO, confronted not just by skill but by humility, began to unravel under the pressure of her own arrogance. The crowd froze as the truth emerged through murmurs and recognition, piecing together the secret that this was no ordinary worker, but a former professional whose life had been redirected by love and loss. When the final point landed, the silence was profound. There was no roar of triumph, only a collective reckoning. The janitor didn't celebrate. He simply nodded, a gesture that acknowledged the game, the moment, and the lesson woven through both. The CEO stood stunned, her challenge fulfilled in a way she never imagined. In that instant, the power dynamic dissolved, replaced by an understanding that titles and wealth mean little against character forged in hardship. The crowd, once eager to mock, now stood witness to grace under fire. After that day, things began to change. The club treated him differently, not because he demanded respect, but because his presence demanded reflection. Opportunities surfaced, not as handouts, but as overdue recognitions of talent and integrity. More importantly, his daughter watched from the sidelines, her eyes shining with pride, learning that her father's quiet strength was more powerful than any applause. The CEO, humbled, redirected her influence toward mentorship and fairness, understanding that true leadership begins with empathy. As this story draws close, if it has stirred something inside you, if it has reminded you that greatness often hides in plain sight, please take a moment to engage with this video. Your likes, shares, and comments help spread messages of compassion and resilience. Before the ending, we have a special request for you. Comment below with one word that describes how this story made you feel, because your voice matters here. In the end, the janitor returned to his routines, but the world around him had shifted. Not because he sought validation, but because he stood firm in who he was. The court where he was once mocked became a symbol of quiet redemption, a reminder that every person carries a story worth respecting. And long after the crowd dispersed, the lesson remained, echoing softly but persistently, that kindness reveals strength, humility uncovers truth, and love, when chosen again and again, becomes the greatest victory of all.